This is Dana with Heart of the House, and today we are going to discuss the controversial topic of tipping, why you should do it, and why it's important to the survival of the service industry. Today, welcome to Heart of the House. Our post-Mardi Gras interview will be about tipping, why people should tip. Occasionally, we run into people that think, oh, it's ridiculous. Why don't we pay people just a workable wage instead of having to rely on tipping? So I brought in my good friend Jess to explain this in the best way possible, because when she ran it down to me after all these years, it was the one thing that made 100% sense. Jessica, can you say hello to everyone?
Hello, everyone.
Now, Jess, explain it all like Clarissa and tell us exactly why people should tip.
So, I love when people say the comment, they should just pay them a livable wage. And it's not that simple. It's not just increasing people's hourly pay to a livable wage, because one, what is a livable wage? But that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But and I feel like people that say that probably have never waited tables or bartended before in their life. So in America right now, I think, besides the major metropolitan areas, a livable wage is considered around $15 an hour. That's about the going rate of what people are paying people these days. It's $15 an hour. So $15 an hour doesn't pay rent on a 2-bedroom apartment
at all.
But if you've never waited on customers before in a restaurant setting, personally, I would never wait tables for $15 an hour. It's too much work. It's very, very physically strenuous. So being paid that, I wouldn't do it. So one, if you went to the concept of paying an hourly wage over tipping, you would probably lose a lot of people in the industry.
Yeah, you're not going to have any staff. Your staff, you have no staff. Yeah.
So that would be the beginning problem, and I think overall and long-term wise, you would end up seeing the loss of a lot of full-service restaurants and people going to counter service because they can't keep a staff. But I think the one misconception is that people believe that restaurant owners are just loaded. They think that it's a very profitable business, that they're making tons of money and they're rich and they're pocketing all this profit, and that's why they're not paying their employees a livable wage. And that's not true. If you've been in the restaurant industry, you know that owning a restaurant, being in the restaurant, it is not easy. And majority of the people do it because they love it. It's a passion of theirs. It's not for the profit. Yes, people make money and make a living off of it, but it's a lot of hours, it's a lot of commitment, it's a lot of stress. Especially during COVID, there were a lot of restaurants that were still paying their staff that, you still have to pay rent and electricity, whether you have business or not, so it's more to it. It's not as profitable as people make it out to be. And I believe the National Restaurant Association does a survey. It's every year, every 3 years. And the most recent one, I think last year, said that restaurants generally used to operate at about a 10% profit after you take labor, insurance, cost of food, all of your overhead expenses. It's about 10% is left over for profit. And now with inflation, since COVID and all of the things going on, they're operating now at less than 5% profit margin. So if you talk about increasing from, most restaurants pay their servers around $2.13 an hour. There are some that get paid more, but generally overall they get paid $2.13 an hour.
Which people really can't understand that. When you say that, they look at you like you sprouted a second head.
Right, and the point of that is to basically cover the taxes, so you're on the tips that they're making, so they're not, paying a gazillion dollars in taxes at the end of the year. So they have to, pay them something. But it's a concept that's been around since the 70s, whether you agree with it or not, it is what it is. But if you were to increase your employees pay from $2.13 an hour to $15 an hour. We're talking about a $13 hike per hour. If you're open from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m., 10 hours a day, and you've got 8 staff members there for those 10 hours a day, so that's 80 hours basically, times $13 an hour, that's $1,000 a day extra you're paying in labor costs, $1,000 a day. And that's just, the smaller restaurants that are only open 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. That doesn't include the ones that open for breakfast or stay open late night and have more than 8 people. I worked at Olive Garden in Mobile, Alabama in college, and we had 20 to 30 servers on the floor every single shift. So, that's just $1,000 a day is just a small business with 8 people on staff. So, I mean, $1,000 a day, if you're open every day of the year besides major holidays, we're talking about $350,000 a year. People don't have that. That's not just laying around the bank. That's not part of their profit that they're not going to miss. That's probably more than some business owners are even making in a profit. So then that means that they've got to come up with that money from somewhere. So that means increasing the price of their food. So then when it comes down to it, are you going to go to this restaurant over here because his cheeseburger is $27, but he's paying them $15 an hour? Or are you going to go to this restaurant across the street where you can get your $13 cheeseburger and you can tip 20% on that, which is $3. So which one are you going to go eat at? You're still going to go to the cheap one because everybody's broke right now. Inflation, it's not just hitting restaurants, it's hitting everybody. So you're going to go to the cheaper place, not the more expensive one. So unless the whole entire country does it at one time, it's not a system that would work. And then when and if we ever decide to go to a livable hourly wage instead of tipping, you're going to see a lot of service industry people go find other means of income, and you're going to lose a lot of these full service restaurants. Yeah. And I would like, when I go out to eat, we eat out a lot because we have 3 kids and we both work. So we eat out a lot because we just are on a time crunch. So when I go out to eat, I would rather be able to reward you for doing a really great job and give you more money than just the 20% that's expected, instead of you're getting paid $15 an hour, whether you do a good job or not.
Right.
That's also going to decrease the really great service that you sometimes see in some restaurants because they have no reason to work harder because they're going to get paid either way.
We had a conversation with Joseph Stodgill from Martin's a couple of weeks ago, and he did bring up that fact. At what point will the public be responsible for what they receive in terms of service? Going to counter service, which a lot of people are. You've got grab and goes popping up left and right. Which is really a job killer for people in the industry. And as you say, on top of that, now we're looking at inflation. We've got some crisis going on. We may have some tariffs affecting things. So the profit margin for these owners is literally going to shrink without some kind of correction. And so relying on the public to do the right thing. And I don't think they really understand how much at their mercy the service industry really is.
For sure. And especially like with Joseph, I think Martin's is one of the few restaurants left in Jackson that you haven't seen a major spike in the cost of food since COVID. I think he's maybe gone up $1 or $2 on some items, but I mean, he's one of the ones that has eaten a lot of that loss with inflation. I know there was another survey done, and it was, majority of the time restaurants, their food cost is supposed to stay within, I think, 20 to 25%, up to 30% on more expensive things like seafood or beef, that can change. And a lot of restaurants are over 30% on food costs at this point because of inflation. And I also wonder how much more a lot of these restaurant owners can take. Like after, you survived COVID and you go, oh, God, we made it through and we somehow can still keep the doors open. Hallelujah. we survived, and then inflation hit, and it was like, wow, God, okay, we got to get through this crisis now. We got to figure out how to adjust and make it through again. And now with the tariffs and all the other things, like it's the last 5 years in the restaurant industry has just been one battle after another, and it's like, oh, when are they gonna stop getting beaten when they're down?
Yeah, it's
one person told
been
me
exhausting.
once that, yeah, I was told one time, and I think it's completely true, and it pertains to restaurant owners as well, but managing a restaurant, your job basically is to put out one dumpster fire after another, and I think that's true for the owners as well, that it's, I was supposed to meet a restaurant owner in Tupelo, Mississippi last year to talk to him about something, and I showed up and he's like, I'm so sorry, my deep freezer went out. I've got to go buy another $60,000 deep freezer today, get it installed, figure out what to do with all this food before I lose all of this food. We're going to have to reschedule, and that's what it is. That's day-to-day life in the restaurant industry, and I think a lot of people don't get that. They think that these restaurant owners are just holding out, counting out their wads of cash, not paying their staff, when reality is they're doing it because they love people. Absolutely. And they love food and they love the industry, not for the profit.
Not to be greedy. And, the other thing that we really haven't touched upon, and this is another thing coming up, too, when we talk about the tariffs, is the discussion about no taxes on tips. What are your thoughts on this?
I don't have a lot of thought on it. I haven't honestly put a lot of thought into it. I can understand why some people, I understand both sides of it. I see why that would be frustrating for people outside of the restaurant industry. I also don't think I think that people that wait tables and bartend for a living would be considered middle class or lower middle class in general. And I think that range of people, whether you're in the service industry or not, pay too much in taxes. So if you're paying less in taxes, good for you. I know that when I worked my salary job for the last 3 years, I paid so much in taxes. It was insane. And that was kind of part of my reason for leaving that job, was because that was a lot of money that I wasn't seeing. It wasn't going to my child's school. It wasn't going to the roads I drive on. It wasn't doing anything to help my day-to-day life. So I can understand the frustration for people outside of the industry that go, well, that's not fair to me. I get that part of it. But also at the same time, overall, I don't think it was probably that much to begin with.
Yeah, that's what my theory. I thought, sometimes I really think this is a diversion or a big nothing sandwich in terms of how it would affect your average bartender or server. I just don't see it.
Right.
I just don't see it. Right. To benefit from that, you would literally have to be raking in the bucks, which brings me to tipping in general. Now, if you had Joe sitting here in front of you who says, I don't know how much to tip. If you had to educate somebody on how much to tip, what would you say to them? What should be the bare minimum they should be doing?
I think 15%. I think 20% is the happy point where I think that's become the normal that we expect. But I think that, with inflation and all the things that are affecting our entire country, that it's come to the point where 15% is more the norm now these days, and which is fine too. If every single table tipped 15%, I would be just fine. Life would be fine. I'd be fine. 20% to me means that you did a good job. You did what you're supposed to, and anything over 20% means you went above and beyond and you did a great job. So that's the range that I usually use. Unfortunately, in today's society, that's not always what seems to happen.
Yeah, the $99 meal and the $100 keep the change, that's kind of got to go away.
Yeah.
Well, Jess, we really appreciate you stopping by and talking to us on Heart of the House and giving this wonderful information that I believe will be helpful. Now, one of the points of this show is really to share our experiences and to educate the people as to what, really goes on and how the industry actually works. And we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right. folks. Well, that was my good friend Jess. We have talked about something that is really kind of affecting us, and it really is a call to arms for people to help us save our industry, because it's really kind of coming down to that with all the pressures. You know, we see restaurants opening and closing on a regular basis. Our focus really is to talk to the people that really understand the basics and the ins and outs and how they create success and how we can make sure that the heart of the house just keeps on pumping. You've been listening to Heart of the House, a podcast about the service industry by the service industry. I'm Dana Petty-Koenig. Join us next time for Heart of the House on YouTube and on podcast on 12 News On Demand. Copyright 2025 Next Star Media.